Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone. Memphis on top. 7 tenths remaining. Conley now a three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Ja Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish, and I'm joined right now by Rob Fischer, the pregame, postgame host for the Grizzlies, sideline man extraordinaire. Rob, how's it going?
It's going well, man. I mean, I wish I was still working.
Sure.
But it is what it is, and trying to get started enjoying my off season a little bit.
So what's it like for you when the season ends? We spoke last year in the preseason, and you were talking about normally you actually take a little break. You're upset, you're heartbroken, but last year it was all joy because you're like, yeah, this is fun. How do you feel this year? It doesn't feel like it was as much joy.
It was weird because that game 6 was so miserable.
Yeah.
That I felt like in the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter, I started to deal with the season being over.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of time to process and grieve.
Yeah. So by the time the game was over, it felt like I knew the season was over, a couple of hours ago. And then, a lot of times in that situation, we'll fly back right after the game, and then you're on the plane and it's a quiet plane and it's kind of depressing. Then you say goodbye to everybody and you just go on your way. And, but we stayed in LA the night. So we went out, with our group, the back of the plane group, and kind of processed everything. And, by the end of the night and by the next morning when you flew out, you were kind of, you were set in the reality that the season was over. So it was almost a little easier to get over this year. But then you get home and, you go through the process of, I always tell people it's like breaking up with the girlfriend. You have this relationship with people for 6 months where, you're traveling with them, you're working with them, you're breaking bread with them, and you're doing it every day for 6 months. And then all of a sudden it's over. So your life changes, and it's not the same routine. It's not going to the gym. It's not going to the airport. It's not going out to eat. It's over. So it's, you lose that relationship, and that's really tough to get over. So I usually take about a week to kind of decompress a little bit, and then start working on the backyard. So it's I've had my week, and I feel like I'm ready. And I've grieved. I've gone through that mode of decompressing through a long season. So doing all right, and just ready to. I'm actually enjoying the NBA playoffs, and kind of just starting to itch for next year.
Rob, that's the true measure of like maybe how healthy our basketball habits are.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you're able to watch the Warriors-Lakers series,
right,
you're doing okay. Like I have friends who are not able to.
Right. I mean, because that series, it's like, wow, we hate one team and the other one knocked us out. So who do you want to root for in that?
Right. It's not fun. Yeah. It's so weird how the manner in which your team loses affects a lot of things. Not just like, as a fan, there's the pain. Like the game 4 loss is just a gut punch where you're like, we were ahead, and we gave up a last second layup to LeBron, and then it's, I don't know. And there's other playoff losses where like you come down to the wire and your season's over. You're like, we were right there, like a flip. Like this one. So we had one of our watch parties in Nashville, and I was at the watch party, and it's like, I mean, we're down by 36 or 40 or whatever, and
almost by 40.
And it was the game was late. First of all, like it's a late tip Central Time, and they've cleared the bench. And it's like, we're down 40. They cleared the bench. It's midnight, and there's 9 minutes left.
Right.
It's like this game is going for forever. And it's like, what do we do here? Well, the season's over.
And games like that, if they happen in the regular season, you're like, all right, whatever. And but you can talk about things on television like, these are big minutes for Kenneth Lofton and big minute for Jake LaRavia. See what he can do in these 9 minutes. And So you kind of watch for other things that, or you say, hey, let's get a little momentum going into the next game.
Yeah.
But when it's over,
I saw someone joking about it. We're like, these are big minutes for Zaire to launch into next year to build some momentum. And I'm like, that's funny. I'm pretty sure you're joking. I'm going to laugh at that, assuming you're just joking.
Yeah, exactly. But so there was nothing to say. I mean,
yeah,
I'm getting nothing from the huddle. I mean, and everything I have from Taylor Jenkins. I mean, it's hard for me down 36 to go, Taylor's been really impressed with Xavier Tillman here in this playoff series. I mean, it's like, I kept telling our producer, I'm like, I'm sorry, I got nothing to help these guys with. There's nothing because there's no tomorrow. It's over.
Sorry, no one was watching.
Yeah, it was tough. It was a rough last game, but it helped me come to grips quicker because of how it felt over.
Well, so another beyond the fan aspect of it, I want to say, like, on the team building and the front office aspect of it, when you lose like that, you can't talk yourself into anything. I don't think of like, oh, we were so close. Like it wasn't one of those. It makes me wonder, like, how would the team approach this offseason differently if it was just a close loss? Like if they got eliminated in a close loss and you're like, man, outside of the first quarter in game 3, we were right there. And then we were there in game 4 and we were there in game 6. If Steven Adams was healthy, we're right there. So like, I feel like you could almost go into the offseason. I assume Dillon Brooks was out the door anyway, but like, if it was a close loss, you maybe go to it, be like, okay, bad luck and injuries, bad matchup. There's this, but now when it's like, it's not close. And maybe when you package it with the previous season, you're like, we've lost 6 straight games on the road in the playoffs as the higher seed. You start thinking maybe we need bigger changes. And we already know, at least it's been reported that Dillon Brooks will be not coming back. So that is a bigger change. So I wonder, like in the front office, if they say, we have to be honest, maybe we need to change some big things.
Yeah, I think so. Again, going back to what we talked about last year, when it ended, you felt like this is just another step in the growth of this team. This is, it was a good season and they were hurt, but boy, they gave them everything they could. And it's just another step in the direction of this team. I think this offseason, the way the season ended, it was, all right, now we got to take that next step. And to take that next step, changes have to be made. I don't think you go into this offseason thinking, hey, we'll be fine next year just from the growth of the team. Ja will be better, Jaren will be better, Dez will be better, and we'll be healthy. But I think even when this team was healthy, they showed some flaws. And to be able to be the number 2 seed 2 years in a row, all right, now your expectation is, well, if we're going to be up in that upper echelon, we better consider ourselves contenders. Maybe you didn't think you'd be a contender this quickly in the process, but you are. I mean, that's the reality of the situation is you are, because you've finished second 2 years in a row. But now what do you need to do to win that championship? And so I think that's what's exciting about this offseason is you're close. Now you make the moves to push the chips in, whereas last year wasn't necessarily the case. Last year, it just felt like another step in the direction, whereas this year feels like, okay, we've taken those steps. Now it's time for the front office to take that step and take this team forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's not a lot of obvious options for what the Grizzlies can do in the offseason. I mean, for every team is like, well, we got to upgrade this position. And clearly every team wants a wing with size who can defend and shoot. And shoot, like, yeah. And it's just like, well, sure. That's the running joke for Dillon Brooks. We're like, man, if he could be a better shooter, he'd be incredible. It's like, well, yeah, he'd be an all-star and he'd be so, it's hard to find those guys. And there aren't a lot of mechanisms for the Grizzlies to improve this year. We all know they want to make a trade, but finding the trade partner is going to be tough. It might be a patient process. I know Grizzlies fans, we want to maybe have the radical changeover, but I know I'm looking at the roster and I'm like, well, if you look at who's going to be the 3 this year, we have Roddy and LaRavia and Zaire Williams, and we have options to try. And when you're shopping for wings, a lot of times the prices are higher in the summer. You wait until the regular season where like something goes poorly and then you can get a discount on a guy.
I went into last offseason and I truly believed that the Grizzlies wouldn't draft 3 players because and they got 4. So I guess I was right. But they got so they get 4 guys. But when you're trying to be a contender, that's a lot of guys on your team that aren't necessarily going to play or be a huge impact on your team. Now, this year, you got 3 more picks. I would like to say I truly believe there's no chance the Grizzlies draft 3 players.
Right.
Because now you already have about 4 guys on your team. If you add another 3 guys that aren't going to make impacts their rookie seasons, well, you don't have much depth if you go that route. So I think they have to make moves. They're forced to make moves. There just aren't roster spots to get more guys. So you're going to have to trade some of the guys that you already have. You're going to have to use the picks to trade. I mean, you have a lot of assets to make moves. They showed that they were very aggressive, despite not coming up with what they wanted at the trade deadline. So I envision them being very, very aggressive because roster management now going forward is going to be very important.
Yeah, so they have 14 guys under contract for next year. They have a first-round pick. You assume, all right, they'll probably draft somebody, and that you could keep that one. That might be your 15th. The other 2 picks are second rounders. Yeah, maybe they'll be 2-way contracts or who knows. But it's funny because, Rob, so I just listened back to last year's show that we did, again, last September. And I got to say, we had a lot of wisdom. We made a lot of correct predictions.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked a lot about like, hey, man, this last season was just fun. And this next season is going to be stressful. And you're almost certainly not going to do as well just because winning more than 56 games is really, really hard. And also there's expectations. And so like we went into last season being like, this isn't going to be an easy ride. But also we spelled out the thing like, we kind of killed our depth. And that's kind of weird because we might be a contender right now. Do they not think that they're a contender? But so now I guess you think, all right, it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years. They have to know. And Zach Kleiman acknowledged it. And like I've mentioned it so many times on this show, like he acknowledged it after the season saying, maybe I should not have tripled down on youth. It was an interesting decision. I mean, I do think we know progression isn't linear and Zaire Williams is a stark example of that, but like another year of Santi Aldama could certainly get better. The leaps Jaren has made each season and he's still so young. Like there is internal developments that we can hope for. But that being said, we need like having 5 projects and a Conchar. No, we need to have like more proven guys. And so that'll be super.
And I think, everybody brought it up all year about losing Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Melton. And certainly you'd love to have kept them on the roster. But the bottom line is when you get to this point and you have to pay Ja and pay Jaren and pay Dez coming up. And if, it was either going to be Dillon or a new guy that you're going to have to pay as well, it starts to get to the point where your depth becomes lean because you can't keep all of those guys. You have to make financial decisions on guys going forward. And I mean, look at the playoffs right now. And a lot of the teams that are left, their lack of depth that they have and how much it's hurting them at this point, Phoenix being a prime example of that. I mean, they go out and make that move, but that's what happens with contending teams. When you want to be a contender, your top guys are making so much money that the bottom of your roster is not. So you have to be very good in filling in those spots and getting guys that can play. And that to me, that's the biggest job of the Grizzlies right now. Sure, they could go out and get somebody who's going to start at the 3 and a guy who's going to make $15 to $20 million a year. That's fine. But tell me about 9, 10, and 11, 8, 9, 10, and 11. What are those guys doing? Can they play? Can they come in and give you a jolt? Can they be effective? Can they make an impact? And I think that's along with finding a new starter. That's something the Grizzlies are going to have to do, whether that's from internal development, which, you're right. You hope Santi takes another step. You hope Zaire comes back and takes a step from his rookie year this year. So, and then you're going into the season without Brandon Clark. So that's going to suck. So, it's roster construction and it becomes very difficult when you continue to get better as a team because you have to make those choices of guys that you're going to keep or guys you're going to lose and guys you're going to pay and guys you're going to bring in. But I think the Grizzlies really need to not draft 3 guys, get a big trade made. And does your trade involve picks or does it involve guys on the team currently? So a lot of work needs to be done. I'm excited about this I'm always excited about off seasons where I feel like they're going to be very active And I feel like this is going to be a very active offseason, which is exciting. But then I'm like a fan too. I don't want to lose any of my guys.
Sure.
I mean, I keep seeing Tyus's name come up, and I'm like, no, we can't get rid of Tyus.
Well,
Luke Bernard's name come up.
You're
like,
you're obviously you're very close to the team because you're around the team. Right. I will say, as a podcaster living hundreds of miles away, maybe less connected, and maybe you're like, you know what? I used to have about 10 to 12 untouchables.
Right.
My list is down to about 3.
Right.
I'm like, I'll listen. I will now listen on anything for guys 4 through 17. Yeah. What do you got? I'm just listening. Like I like them. I might have their jerseys, but also, you know,
I'm good to get another jersey.
I don't want to lose in 6 as the 2 seed again.
Yeah, exactly.
I am now open to some ideas. So the idea that you talked about when you start paying your guys, it gets harder to fill out your depth. And like the Nuggets, I think, have played 8 guys this entire playoffs, and they're the ones who everyone says has better depth than the Suns. So like, yeah, it's hard. But so something weird that happened, and I guess this is like the latest Grizzlies news, is Ja Morant missed making an All-NBA team. And there's a financial penalty to Ja. Like, he loses out on $40 million over the lifetime of his extension. If we take out the loss of money for Ja, if we just coldly look at this as a team perspective, this is actually really good for the Grizzlies. As far as like the new CBA, it seems even worse if you go into the luxury tax, and it's harder to build out your squad. They already have Jaren on what is an unbelievably cheap extension. And you know, when they were planning out their future, and maybe even last summer, when they're like, you know what, let's restock the cupboard with maybe projects or guys that we think can be cheap depth. Part of the calculus was because Ja Morant's a supermax player, right, and he's going to be paid a supermax, but now he's not. And there's actually a little bit more wiggle room. I know it's weird to be like, that's really stinks for Ja, but it's actually really good for the Grizzlies roster building. They now, like, $8 million a year. It could be a Bruce Brown or somebody, you know, it could be another guy who can fill out your depth. What were your thoughts, by the way, on Ja Morant missing All NBA? Like, I don't feel outraged because the 6 guards that made it above him, they all have incredible cases. Yeah.
Well, I think that, and, you know, I mean, let's be honest. Ja Morant did not make it because of the last month of the season.
Oh, 100%. Right. It was awkward.
Period.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's reality. I mean, I think you can make an argument for Ja over some of the guys, some of the guards that are on there. Damian Lillard, for example. I think you can make an argument for Ja over Dame. I think you can make an argument for Ja with De'Aaron Fox. No, you can make a De'Aaron Fox argument over Ja.
Right.
And you could make a Dame Lillard argument. But the reality is the last month of the year that derailed Ja's chances of making All NBA. It just did. So I wasn't surprised in the least bit that he didn't make it. I was a little surprised that Jaren didn't get a little more love than he
was
did.
Real low. Yeah,
that surprised me a little bit because of the season that he had. But you know, if you can take something positive out of it, one, the money that you were talking about, that can help the Grizzlies out. But number 2, you know, Ja just collects things and puts them on his shoulder. He just collects them. I don't think Ja's going to have a great season next year because he was left off the All NBA. But I think Ja's motivation, he likes to be motivated by things that he feels he was slighted. And hopefully this is something that motivates Ja for next year. It wouldn't surprise me. I think a lot of things will motivate Ja from this year going into next year. So I'm excited about what Ja's going to bring. You know, it's too bad he wasn't one of the All NBA teams, but again, I don't think if you would have asked me yesterday if I thought he'd make it, I'd say no.
I think most people had sketched it out and they were like, yeah, he's not going to make it. And again, we can all acknowledge that it's because of the off-court stuff. It's because of that happened, became a big story. That's why he got left off. People
could use the argument of, well, it's a number of games that he missed. No. I mean, Dame played like 58. Yeah. So that wasn't it. It's how he missed those games, right, is why he didn't get voted.
My twist is going to be Luka Doncic should have been a forward and then we kick Julius Randle off, and then Ja makes it as a guard. That's how we can do it. We don't have to worry about that next year. I guess it's going to be positionless.
That's right.
Going forward. Also, news that came out was the all defensive teams. We'll talk about that right after this short break. Download the brand new official Grind City Media mobile app. Explore new ways to access your favorite Grind City Media content, from your favorite shows and series to news and entertainment. Stay connected with exclusive content at your fingertips with the new Grind City Media mobile app, available in both the Apple and Google Play stores. All right, so the all defensive teams were announced, and the Grizzlies got two guys on there.
Yeah.
Jaren Jackson Jr., I believe, is the youngest player ever to make two first teams all defense. Joins Tony Allen, or he already was joined with Tony Allen as the only Grizzlies players to be all defense first team. Of course, the fun novelty stat there being Marc Gasol was second team all defense the year he won defensive player of the year. And then Dillon Brooks makes second team all defense. What were your thoughts on Jaren getting recognized once again for the fantastic season he had?
I think it's great. I think it's great that he was recognized as the defensive player of the year. It means that people were paying attention to Jaren Jackson Jr. as a defensive player, and he was so dominant on that side of the floor this year. So happy for him. Not surprised that he made first team all defense. Happy for Dillon Brooks to get the second team all defense. A lot of times the all defensive awards are reputation based. Mm-hmm. And I think Dillon Brooks, after what we saw 2 years ago against Utah, kind of built that reputation that I thought the following season he would be on that list. And then he started the season injured, so he got off to a really slow start and did not make one of the top two teams. But then he comes back this year and he's able to make second team. I'll tell you what, if that thing was voted on today, Dillon Brooks wouldn't make it either.
Right. Yeah. Just based on the play, because
he was the headline for 2 weeks and not for good reason. So, but I think very well deserved, and I think it's something that he has developed his earning of that acknowledgement over the last couple of years, going back to that series against the Utah Jazz. So I think Dillon, it's been a process that has gotten him on this list, and so happy for him. And it's great to see that the Grizzlies have two players on that all defensive teams. And I think they're both worthy and both deserving. And hopefully it's something Jaren can, now with it being a reputation thing, hopefully Jaren's on everybody's minds going into each season going forward.
Yeah, he can hang on to it. Tony Allen, of course, has 6 all defensive teams. He has the most in Grizzlies franchise history. And then Mike Conley made one as well. I believe I'm remembering everyone who's ever made it for the Grizzlies. Yeah, it's like a cumulative thing. And it's also a team-based award. And I think it's one of those things where you put in the work the previous season, where the Grizzlies, 56 wins and Dillon's guarding all the best players. And then you repeat it again and you get that built up. And I think it's similar for Jaren winning Defensive Player of the Year. Yes, his numbers were astounding, and all the block numbers and blocks plus steals and all the rim protection numbers. But like, if you don't lead the league in blocks the year before, it's still hard to build those things, So I think that's one of those things where Jaren came in, already established himself as a blocks guy. And then you get rewarded maybe in year 2, and hopefully Jaren can hang on and go on a long streak.
And I think at the end of the season, it came down to 3 guys. It felt like, and Jaren just excelled at the end of the season, and it was very noticeable. I mean, his highlight reel was incredible. The block numbers were incredible, and then to add to that, he was putting up 30 points a game, which just becomes more recognizable. So yeah, it was a thing that he developed, and that notoriety continued to grow. And I think the way that he finished the season got him that all defensive player of the year. And now you go into a season where that expectation is going to be on you, that you're going to be an all defensive type player. And now you have to live up to it again and almost duplicate what you've been doing to get that honor going forward.
What's funny is, like, speaking of building momentum for next season, I think one guy who's going to maybe be way more prominent in all NBA discussions and all defensive team discussions is just Anthony Davis. like Anthony Davis with the playoffs that he's had, and then like seeing him omitted from like every like this guy's not on the this guy didn't even like place, didn't even shut, like wasn't in top 10 and he's a player of the year stuff, and like he's not on an all NBA team, and it's because he's missed so many games, you know, in so many seasons. But now it's one of those things where like, hey, we forgot about Anthony Davis, he's incredible, so he'll probably, everyone next year is gonna be like, I don't care if he played 56 games. Yeah, I'm not.
You'll go into the season next year where he's going to be on the list for MVP,
of course. Yeah, agreed, because
of the way that he's played in the playoffs. So he'll have a head start on people for that category going into next season because of how well he played. His whole thing is about health. As you mentioned, how many games he plays and how healthy he can be.
Well, one of the interesting things is I believe only 4 of the 15 players who made the all NBA teams played 65 or more games.
Wow.
So next year you have to play 65 or more games to be eligible for all NBA.
It's going to be like the NFL Pro Bowl.
It's going to be who was the Ravens backup who made the Pro Bowl this year?
That's right.
I can't remember his name.
That's right. I can't remember either. But
there's some guy.
That's what's going to happen. Yeah. Luke
Kennard,
all NBA first team.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to be like, is it just Kevon Looney, Mikal Bridges on the all NBA team?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe guys will play more. Maybe the all NBA teams will look very, very funny. Speaking of Jaren, so Jaren, we want him to carry over this momentum from Defensive Player of the Year, but also we wanted to carry over the offensive strides he made and then improve upon what frankly was a lackluster offensive performance in the playoffs. His game 1 was incredible. After that, he struggled again. And this is now 2 straight seasons where on the road games, particularly, he shot the ball terribly. The random obscure stat I found, Jaren in the last 6 playoff road games attempted at least 12 shots in each game, shot 33% or worse in each game. The only other player who's done that is Bob Cousy in 1960, which is 6 straight playoff road games, shooting 33% or worse while attempting at least 12 shots in each game. A cherry-picked, obscure stat, but still, the general feeling is not great. He has not been the offensive, I don't know, like he's never probably going to be a hub, but we need him to be, I think, an all-star on both sides of the ball for the Grizzlies to get where they want to go. Like we have Ja scoring, we have Desmond scoring. If Jaren can become, I think in the postseason offensively, that third threat, or like a one, if it's 1A, 1B, 1C between those 3 guys, I think the Grizzlies can accomplish their goals, even if they don't like acquire maybe another all-star. Like, what do you think as far as Jaren's, either what's happened to him in the postseason? Is it something to be concerned about? Or is just, you think he's going to continue growing into his body, into his skills as he ages?
I think he'll continue to grow because we saw such a big leap this year that I think we'll see a big leap next year. I think, defensively, he just continued to get better. I think that was more progression than anything, what he did defensively this year. But offensively, I think a lot of it came down to his aggression. As Taylor Jenkins said all the time, his assertiveness of wanting to get to the basket. And I think it would help him a lot if Steven Adams is on the floor. I think that's one that would help. But because when Steven Adams is on the floor, the ball moves better, the guys move better, and Jaren is moving. And when that's happening, you're getting open shots, you're getting to the basket a little bit easier. So I think he'll be fine offensively. The defense, that clamps up a little bit in the postseason. But Jaren's whole thing, because we know how skilled he is. And we saw this year his ability to get to the basket and score at ease so many times that I think for Jaren, it's always 2 things. One is availability, being on the floor, and 2 is foul trouble. And those 2 things go hand in hand. And I think he was a lot better with the foul trouble this year, and that was huge in his production. And I think so his availability, when he's on the floor, the team's better. And he doesn't always have to be that guy. As you said, he doesn't have to be the hub. He doesn't have to be the go-to guy, but he is such a threat out there. I'd like, the stat you had 12 field goals a game. I like when Jaren gets about 18.
Yeah.
When he gets about 18 to 20 field goals, Jaren's putting up huge numbers. Or if it's about 15 or 14, but he's getting to the free throw line 7 or 8 times. The more he's involved, the better the Grizzlies are. So I think it's, for him, maybe more than anybody, I just think it's continued growth. Is he done growing, first of all? And is his body done, filling out? I don't think so. I think he'll continue to grow I mean, it's amazing how far he's come in just the 4 years that or 5 years, I guess, 4 years that he's been here, in our 5 years, and to see how his body is developed. And so a little bit more of that, and, just continue growing. I think he's got still so much more potential offensively from what we saw this year, that's exciting going forward, because the defense is going to be there. And to me, it's just a matter of Jaren being on the floor. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and one thing he did do well in this postseason, one of the many things, was he got to the foul line and he made his free throws. So that was great to see. Wrapping up here, what's maybe your favorite memory? What's your favorite memory of this last season, or what was the high point for you? It could be either the Grizzlies related, or it could just be personal.
Boy, there's just so much, and it all blends in together.
Sure.
One thing that stands out to me, and I'm sure I'll think of something else once we get off here, but the one game that stood out to me was the David Roddy game against the Dallas Mavericks. Yeah, when it looked like the Grizzlies were done, and David Roddy comes in and just had a monster performance against the Mavericks, and it was just so cool to see a player who, he was in and out of the lineup, he was in and out of the hustle. He wasn't getting minutes, and then all of a sudden he'd be thrown in there for 8 minutes. And this night they needed a jolt of energy, and he came in and single-handedly won them the game against the Dallas Mavericks. And it was a cool moment, because after the game, Brad Jones, Grizzlies assistant coach, it was late at night, and I'm laying in bed, and I get a text from him, and he just said, "That was really cool." And I just texted him back, and I said, "Yeah, man. I mean, it's something David Roddy will never forget the rest of his life. It was his coming out party in the NBA. And it's one of those games that you won't forget, because it was such a special game for him, and we won't forget it. And it was that was an awesome moment this year. And then kicking the Warriors' ass is always that's always exciting.
Honestly, I don't know what my favorite one was, but when you just mentioned that, like a parting memory of Dillon Brooks was the game against the Warriors where Dillon Brooks rubs up against Draymond's arm, and Dillon thoroughly outplays Steph Curry. 100% on the offensive and defensive end. I guess I could have emphasized that differently. On the defensive and offensive end, Dillon Brooks outplayed Steph Curry. Like, just freeze that one game. Pass your Dillon's agent, who's furious at Shams Charania. Just circulate the game tape of Dillon Brooks talking a huge game, being called out by Draymond on a podcast, and then the Grizzlies beating down the Warriors behind Dillon Brooks playing, honestly, like a perfect, flawless game. Final thing, Rob. One under-discussed, I think, change this year for the Grizzlies was you going with a beard. What went into that? What went into that decision?
In the off season, I always have a beard.
Okay.
And John Puglisi of the Grizzlies, who sits next to me during the games, he has a beard. He asked me. It was a going away party for someone from the Grizzlies, and it was that same week that I turned 50, and all of a sudden I can't see anymore either. So I got glasses. And so I showed up at this party. I had my glasses on, and I had the beard. And he just said, "Why don't you go with the beard?" He's been telling me this for the years. Why don't you just go with the beard? It's how you look. It's your look. Just go with it. Why do you shave every time? And I was like, well, I don't know. I always figured Fox didn't want, when it was Fox. Right. Fox didn't want me having the beard, so I never did it. And then our boss, Scott Zachary, came walking into the party, and Pug said, "Well, why doesn't let Fish go with the beard?" And he's like, "I don't care. You can go with the beard if you want." Right. And I was like, all right. So then they said, well, let's try it in the preseason. Make sure no one from Bally's is like, "Hey, what the hell's he doing? What's this look?" So I showed up with the beard and the glasses, and no one said anything negative, and it turned out it's my new look. It's where I've gone forward.
That's great.
I'm happy about it, because I hate shaving.
Well, no, that's amazing. That's great. I'm happy for you. I mean, I'm a beard guy who I just shave. I'm normally I'm the Grizzly Adams type beard man. So how far can you push it is the question. Do you ever let an unkempt beard? Can we get it growing all summer?
I just shaved yesterday, actually, because there were hairs starting to get in my mouth. And
that happens.
And I was starting to stretch a little bit.
It's harder. Like, eating chicken wings, burritos, tacos. It gets way harder.
So it's about once a week. Okay. I'll trim, the neck and everything every couple of days, but I'll trim the beard itself maybe once a week.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad I got some beard talk.
So
on
that's
here.
my look next year. No change in the look next year.
One of my true passions.
Beard. Yeah.
Glasses and beard, Rob.
Glasses and beard. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, Rob. It's always a pleasure talking with you. We'll check you out over on Grind City Media on the various podcasts you're doing.
That's right.
For them. And we'll look forward to the next time you come on.
Keith, always a pleasure, man. Anytime.
Thanks, Rob.